Welcome to worship in the Unitarian Universalist Church of Charlotte. Children's book author and poet Phyllis McGinley was fascinated by those who push themselves attempt after attempt closer to perfection. In matters of faith, in the arts, McGinley applauded those who keep trying, who bring their whole selves to the work of living meaningful lives, of creating something beautiful. It was the repeated attempts that left McGinley feeling hopeful about her own prospects. As she put it, the wonderful thing about saints is that they were human. They lost their tempers, got hungry, scolded God, were egotistical or testy or impatient in their turns, made mistakes and regretted them. Still, she says, they went on doggedly blundering toward heaven. In that spirit, we worship together this morning. Welcome all. And as we prepare to sing, would you turn and welcome the people around you?
We light this chalice so we may be called to understand and to celebrate that there is no light without darkness, no beauty without imperfection. And as the words of Leonard Cohen remind us, that there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Welcome again to today's service. We're happy you're with us today, in this room or joining us remotely. And we're pleased to have guests with us. Our members would like to greet you personally following the service. So if you are visiting, please raise your hand and keep it up. Members, take note of guests seated near you, and after the service, invite them to join you for coffee and conversation in Freeman Hall. Should it enhance your experience of future services, you can find both a large print order of service and a personal hearing assistance device on the table at the entrance to the sanctuary. There's also an elevator available. If you'd like to learn more about us, please fill out a yellow card and place it in an offering basket later in the service. Members with a life event to share can do so on the reverse side of the card. The cards and offering envelopes are on the clipboards at the end of the row. Please begin passing them now. Visitors interested in hearing about how to become a member can talk with our membership coordinator, Kelly Green. Her contact information is on the back of your order of service. Again, to each of you, welcome.
John Ruskin was an art critic and social commentator prominent in the second half of the 19th century. And Ruskin used his voice in a variety of ways to offer critiques of capitalism, as well as to explore the crafts of painting and architecture and the role of art and artistry in society. In an 1860 essay entitled "Unto This Last," Ruskin wrote about the role of imperfection in all great endeavors. He said, "Imperfection is in some sort essential to all that we know of life. It is the sign of life in a mortal body, that is to say, of a state of progress and change. Nothing that lives is or can be rigidly perfect. Part of it is decaying, part nascent. And in all things that live, there are certain irregularities and deficiencies, which are not only signs of life, but sources of beauty."
Our second reading is by Elizabeth Lesser from her memoir, Marrow, a Love Story. This is the paradox at the heart of being human. If we wait for the perfect time, the perfect person, the perfected self, we'll stay frozen in an idea of love. But if we fearlessly engage with the life spread out before us, we will be rewarded with a heart that can hold it all: happiness and messiness, clarity and confusion, love and loss.
Even though the pulpit is blocking most of my globe-like glory, you can probably guess what is most on my mind this morning. I'm super pregnant. And at any moment, this new life will decide to make an entrance in the world, which is both exhilarating and terrifying. I admit that while I'm talking about this child and the work of parenting in the future sense, I'm consumed by how desperately I want to be a perfect parent. When my husband Steve and I brought our first child, Ethan, home, we were consumed with that same desire. The hospital staff taught us how to swaddle Ethan, how to bathe him, what position he should sleep in, which positions he should never sleep in under any circumstances. And when we got home, Ethan hated to be swaddled, and he would not sleep flat on his back on a firm surface. So instead, we took turns, half wild with sleep deprivation, holding him upright while he slept on our chest. I am able to hold things in perspective. It doesn't bother me so much falling short on bedtime routines or how much sugar or screen time I allow in one day. The daily falling short does add up, of course, but I'm learning that there are more distressing mistakes to be made. One that comes to mind happened this past Thanksgiving. We were trying to get everything out of our apartment and into the car, anticipating a long drive filled with traffic after a long day on the way to my mom's house. 2-year-old Ethan was not making it easy to get all the last-minute things done, and everyone was irritable. And I was trying to finish up some last-minute dishes when suddenly, apparently, it was all just too much. And I threw a pot across the kitchen, and I slammed another one hard against the counter and screamed. And I am all for expressing ourselves, but it was a scary scream for a toddler to hear. And I looked over to see a mixture of fear, worry, and confusion on Ethan's little face. This precious child with his gorgeous, full cheeks and curious eyes and adorably tiny shoes. was scared of me. So we couldn't figure out how to swaddle him or get him to sleep when we wanted. I was not the perfect parent, but slowly, day by day, since his birth, Ethan and I had built a trust with one another. I'd started feeling that Ethan relaxed more in my presence, sensing a haven, a safe place to rest when the world felt scary or vast. And looking at his face after the pot throwing incident, I was filled to the brim with regret and with shame. Even after I said, "I'm sorry," and gave Ethan a big hug and forced my voice to be more light and cheerful, "We're going to Grandma's house, baby," I wanted to hide somewhere far away from Ethan, curl up in a ball, and cry. I so wish there was an easy antidote for the feelings that come with falling short of our ideal. I wish there was some measure of genuine comfort in hearing, "No one's perfect. Don't worry, it's no big deal. It doesn't matter." Except it does matter. When our falling short feels most painful, it's because we care deeply, because the task at hand matters immensely. So much that we would do it perfectly if we could. For over 2 decades of my life, I experienced, as a competitive swimmer, how my teammates and I devoted countless hours of our lives to attempting perfection. A coach might pull you out of the pool to explain that your hand was just a few degrees off the perfect position while entering or exiting the water. And then your task was to fixate on that single flaw, correcting it, trying for thousands of yards to get it just right. In college, to prepare for a race, we were instructed to visualize the perfect outcome. We'd lay on our towels on the pool deck after practice as our coach asked us to bring to mind what our feet would feel like on the rough surface of the starting block, the feeling of entering the water at just the right depth to maximize momentum and limit drag. When in the race would you first notice your lungs straining, and how would you manage to push them harder? At what rate would you kick your legs after the third turn? How would it feel when your fingertips touched the wall and you looked up to see that near impossible best time you were striving for flashing on the scoreboard? What amazes me is how often, race after race, we all fell short of the ideal we'd visualized and practiced hundreds of times. How many times we felt defeated and dejected. All that effort could, and often did, result in heartbreak, which in my mind can only lead to one conclusion. There was something life-giving in the trying, in putting it all out on the line, wanting so openly to do something well. Surely artists know this. When they sit down with a blank canvas or a lump of clay in front of them, wanting to create something beautiful, something soul-stirring. They must feel the buzz of possibility, the vitality in the attempt. And when an artist sits down to their work, they must experience what any of us experience when we attempt anything that matters. A mixture of fear and hope, apprehension and determination. Likely when the brush strokes stop, when the clay dries, they will find they have fallen short of their ideal. Or a critic will deem what they produce only so-so. Still they paint, still they shape the clay, still they try again. We heard earlier in the first reading the voice of the art critic John Ruskin, who applauded the honest attempt at creating something meaningful, even when the final product falls short of the ideal. Ruskin admitted, "Imperfection is essential to all that we know of life. In all things that live, there are certain irregularities and deficiencies, which are not only signs of life, but sources of beauty." Last Thanksgiving, after I threw one pot across the kitchen and slammed another down on the countertop, all while screaming in front of my toddler, we did all make it into the car with everything we meant to bring to my mom's house. I said I was sorry a few more times. My husband put on my favorite CD and skipped to tracks he knows are my comfort songs, and every so often would reach over to take my hand for a moment. And Ethan, in between his lengthy, half-coherent explanations of what his red Tyrannosaurus Rex toy was doing, asked again and again from the back seat, "You okay, Mommy? Mommy, you okay?" Just when my flaws as a parent felt most starkly on display, just when I thought my imperfections might at last this time add up to ultimate failure, just when my irregularities and deficiencies seemed they might outweigh my attempts to bring my whole heart to the work of parenting, I found that all was not lost. And in fact, there in the car with the music playing in the company of my loved ones, I was closer still to what is beautiful and good, ready to make the next honest, hopeful, heart-filled attempt. In the words of Elizabeth Lesser, this is the paradox at the heart of being human. If we wait for the perfect and perfected self, we'll stay frozen. But if we fearlessly engage with the life spread out before us, we will be rewarded with a heart that can hold it all. Blessed be. Amen.
Good morning. My name is Pete Moore. My wife Sharon and I have been active members of this congregation for going on 23 years. Today's service theme hits close to home. Why? Because some people think I'm a perfectionist control freak. Whether here in our congregation, at the workplace, or on the home front. Now, in my defense, the only people who think these things about me are the people who know me. But wait, there's more. I'm not just a perfectionist, I'm also a hopeless procrastinator who lives by the maxim, don't put off till tomorrow what you can put off until the day after. A little sense of humor about this can help. One Christmas, Sharon gave me the t-shirt I'm wearing today. It says, I'm a perfectionist and a procrastinator. Someday, I'm going to be perfect. You know, in some ways, perfectionism and procrastination can seem, well, I'm looking for exactly the right word here. I'll think of it later. But the two concepts of perfectionism and procrastination seem, if not contradictory, at least in tension. On the one hand, perfectionism is unhealthy, undesirable, and potentially self-destructive. But at least its heart is in the right place. I mean, what's wrong with striving to be error-free? To be the best of the best? To earn not just an A or an A+, but an A++ plus extra credit. On the other hand, where's the good in procrastination? More like laziness, deliberate self-obstructionist, I'll get around to it-ism. Or in religious terms, sloth, one of the 7 deadly sins. Now, over time, I've concluded that despite their apparent dissimilarities, perfectionism and procrastination aren't so different from each other after all. You can think of them as two sides of the same coin. That coin is fear of failure. Fear of not measuring up to an impossible ideal. Fear of never being good enough. Perfectionism spawns hyperactivity designed to achieve a flawless result. I throw myself into the relentless pursuit of not screwing up. The motivation is strong and the stakes are high. If I'm perfect, then I'll be loved. Procrastination is a form of paralysis that avoids confronting the prospect of failure altogether. Rather than engage, I choose to withdraw until the calendar or the clock or my boss or my spouse or the snooze button on my alarm tells me, time's up. Now, admittedly, this all may sound a bit dire and dramatic, and sometimes it is. But it doesn't have to be, not all the time anyway, and not with the volume on perfectionism or procrastination cranked up to 11. If I pause, breathe, and step back, I can get a clearer, less distorted view of the world and my capacity to make it more beautiful, even if I can't make it, or myself, perfect. Perfect or not, I'm grateful as a member of this congregation for the opportunity to explore and celebrate these important spiritual themes. Thank you.
Now I'm going to sing about it.
I'd like to make a sculpture out of glass, so beautiful that it could make you cry. But when I look out at the snowflakes as they fall against my window, I cannot seem to bring myself to try. I just can't seem to bring myself to try to make a thing of beauty, just one thing of beauty, only for an instant, with truth and with love, to make a thing of beauty, just one thing of beauty, a single thing of beauty, that would be enough. I'd like to weave a tapestry of yarn, so intricate that it could break your heart. But when I look out at that web as it's shining in the sunlight, I cannot seem to bring myself to start. I just can't seem to bring myself to start to make a thing of beauty, just one thing of beauty, only for an instant, with truth and with love, to make a thing of beauty, just one thing of beauty, a single thing of beauty, that would be enough. I'd like to sing a song of breath and air, so wonderful that it could touch your soul. When I listen to the robin as he's heralding the springtime, I cannot take the first step towards my goal. I just can't take the first step towards my goal. But I can try to live a life that makes an honest story, with challenges, adventures, with truth and with love, and that would be a thing of beauty, a single thing of beauty, a human thing of beauty, and that would be enough.
Please join me in meditation. These are the words of Unitarian Universalist minister Richard Gilbert. In the midst of the whirling day, in the hectic rush to be doing, In the frantic pace of life, pause here a moment. Catch your breath. Relax your body. Loosen your grip on life. Consider that our lives are always unfinished business. Imagine that the picture of our being is never complete. Allow your life to be a work in progress. Do not hurry to mold the masterpiece. Do not rush to finish the picture. Do not be impatient to complete the drawing. From beckoning birth to dawning death, we are in process, and always there is more to be done. Do not let the incompleteness weigh on your spirit. Do not despair that imperfection marks your every day. Do not fear that you are still in the making. Let us instead be grateful that the world is still to be created. Let us give thanks that we can be more than we are. Let us celebrate the power of the incomplete, for life is always unfinished business. May we remember. In the life of this congregation, there are always opportunities to be inspired, challenged, to learn and to grow and build relationships with the people around you while you do it. You can peruse the back of your order of service for a number of those opportunities. And before I highlight one of them, I am delighted to invite forward Franklin McClellan to say a few words on behalf of our stewardship team.
$1,600. $1,600 per person, or if it helps, roughly $30 a week. This is what it takes, on average, to keep per adult member to keep this place operating. $1,600 for the building, the lights, maintenance of 10 different HVAC systems, groundskeeping, sound system, RE classes, 2 weekly services, and of course, our dedicated and hardworking staff. But that's just the basics. To prepare for this Stewardship Minute, I counted how many different events have or will occur here at the UUCC over the month of February. I counted 90. 90, or roughly 3 every day of the month. And that's not counting Sunday services, room at the inn, open door school, or any off-campus events such as court watching. Look, like all of you, I've got a busy life. Between work, being a husband, or a father to a newly empowered teenager, I feel lucky to be here, make it here on Sundays on even a semi-regular basis, much less take part in many, or honestly any, of the supplemental programming opportunities. But we've embraced where we can. I'm part of stewardship, obviously, help out with flipping slides once a month. My wife, Susan, sitting over there, is very active in the music programs, while our daughter, Eliza, is sometimes here up to 8 hours on a given Sunday, splitting time between RE, 8th grade OWL, or even assisting with childcare. We're grateful to have a place like the UUCC available to all of us and for the Charlotte community at large. A place where we can strive to be our best selves, where we can explore our spirituality on our own way, a place where we can envision and hope for a better world. And yeah, sometimes it's hard. But it is this innate challenge of the UU faith, the demand on us, and the fight for better, this that brings us back and makes us a place where my family and I choose to spend our Sunday mornings. We live in a world where there are ever-increasing demands for our time, our energy, and honestly, yes, our money. My funding calculus is brutally rational. Where do I get the greatest emotional and mental satisfaction for the investment? We all face this choice. But for the McClellans, we believe in the UUCC, what it is, what it means, and where it is going. And so we have decided as a family to proudly meet the 8% Yes Stewardship Challenge, and I'd ask each of you to consider doing the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Franklin. Our board was recently asked by the Focus 2020 task group to call a special congregational meeting where we will at last decide on the reconsideration of the name of our congregation. And that special meeting is March 8th at 12:30 p.m. here in the sanctuary, March 8th. Voting members, mark your calendars and know that next Sunday in between services, there will be a chance to hear more from the team if you have questions about the decision-making process. If you are carrying with you today a joy, a sorrow, or remembrance that feels particularly significant, in a moment when the music is playing and the offering baskets are being passed, you are welcome, member and visitor alike, to come forward and light a candle.
Author Gary Zukav writes, "The only things standing between you and the compassionate, wise, and creative person you want to be are matters of choice, your choice. No one can occupy your generosity except you." We will now give and receive the offering.
Please be seated. I am Jay Leach, the other minister of this congregation. In lives that are often marked by challenge, by struggle, by heartbreak, and by loss, indications of new life bolster all of us. Just as this season of new blossoming and blooming lifts our spirits, so too we as a congregation have delighted in the news that Eve and her family are expecting. And we have delighted in the days and the weeks and the months that have passed since we first heard this news, and have enjoyed this experience, days that likely have passed with greater ease for many of us than for Eve. Today marks Eve's last Sunday with us for a while. Not only as a minister, but as the chief of your staff, I want you to hear how proud and how grateful I am that this congregation relates to its professional staff not only fairly, not only justly. You relate to us generously, and it is out of that generosity made possible by not only generous pledges, but generous contributions, that we are able to do the right thing, to do the thing that all workplaces should be doing. Today, at the end of this week, assuming Eve makes it to the end of this week, not a guarantee, Eve will embark on 8 weeks of paid parental leave, made possible by your generosity. Eve is opting to extend that by 2 weeks of vacation. So Eve will be away for a total of 10 weeks, which means she will leave at the end of this week and will return at the 1st of May. We wanted to acknowledge this today, to celebrate it together. Eve has some words she wants you to hear as she departs.
I wanted you all to know that as my ministry here continues to unfold, it's been almost 2 years since I came. It is one of the greatest joys of my life to be one of the ministers serving you. And I am so grateful for this time, a way to savor my expanding family and recover. And I am fairly certain that I will be more sleep-deprived, a version of myself when I return. But I will be anxiously awaiting the time to get back to you and continue the growing and learning that we're doing together. So I'll miss you. Thank you.
Eve, on behalf of your congregation, thank you for modeling for us that there are things more important than work. Thank you for modeling for us that there are things more important than ministry. Thank you for taking the time to pay undivided attention to the things that matter most in your life. You go with our love, you go with our blessings, you go with our prayers. We hold you and Steve and Ethan and this young life we're so excited to meet in our thoughts in your absence. And I can assure you that all of us collectively, and no one more so than me, will anxiously await your return on the 1st of May. Go with our blessing so that you might extend your personal words of support and love to Eve We're going to invite you, as soon as the service is over, we're going to forego the greeting line at the door and instead invite you to come immediately over into Freeman Hall, where you can offer your own blessing and send off to Eve, as this is her last Sunday with us until May. Thank you.